number one.
Miss any part of the show? Every moment of every show is available in podcast form by searching Hans and Scotty on your favorite podcasting platform or online at KSLSports.com. This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Pass the mother ball. Run back on defense. When it's time to communicate what we're doing on defense, you should do it at a volume louder than I'm talking to you right now. When there is a loose ball, you need to want it more than the other team. You are a member of a team. This is not about you. This is not a personal workout for you. I could go on and on and on, but you get the point. It's a team game. The moment that you make everything about yourself is the moment that it all goes bad.
Strong comments last night from Will Hardy, head coach of the Utah Jazz. Yes, it's a rebuilding year. Yes, the Jazz are essentially tanking, but that doesn't mean you need to play like garbage. And he was not pleased with how the Jazz performed in the second half in their loss last night. Well, helping us break it all down, it is the man himself. It is Kurt Helin from NBC Sports and ProBasketballTalk.com. Kurt, how are you?
I think I'm in a better mood than Will Hardy. I'm doing all right.
Yeah. Ooh, that got tempered. What'd you think of some of those comments?
You know what, though? I think as a coach, you have to pick your spots with that, right? Like, if you're just a yeller all the time, it gets drowned out. But if you're not, and Will's not, right? Like, he's not that.
No.
And I don't really think many guys by the NBA level really, frankly, are. It's not how you get through to guys at this level. But when you do, it's effective. And I think that, like, when you're rebuilding, when you're in the situation Utah is right now, you are still trying to build a culture of not just style of play, but playing hard every night, playing a certain style of defense, communicating. You expect certain levels of not levels of performance, but levels of effort to be met, right? Like, just, we're going to do things this way. And even when it doesn't result in wins every night, we're going to keep doing it that way because it's how we want to play. It's how we want things to go. And clearly things did not go that way recently. And for that game, and he just lost in the second half of that game, frankly. And he snapped, and I don't really blame him, because if you're trying to get through to these young players, occasionally you need to, you need to go and throw the bats in the shower and call them lollygaggers and frighten them a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, George Karl used to say you get 3 of them a year. And then if you go any more, then everybody just kind of tones you out and doesn't care.
Right.
You get 3 meltdowns a year, and I don't know if that constitutes as a meltdown, but it's pretty close by Will Hardy. He usually keeps a pretty even-keeled impression after games and things like that. So
I really like him.
I do too.
I don't know what you think, Kurt, but I have met him a few times. Scotty and I have had a couple conversations with him, but I really like who Will Hardy is. And I made the statement after we played his comments in full. I said, I'm not going to judge him until he's got a player on the court, because, Kurt, until you got a player in the NBA, it doesn't matter what coach you've got, right? Yeah,
exactly. You guys know him and have spoken to him more than I do, but I more than I have, certainly. I've gotten that same impression. Look, first off, he is well respected around the league for what he's gotten out of these players. And I think there is an understanding that it just takes time to build these things. And so, I like him. I like him as the coach for wherever this ends up going. And hopefully that, look, again, already we've talked about it before, the way Isaiah Collier has played of late, the way some other people have played. You're like, hey, this, obviously Kessler and others, like, this could be part of whatever it ends up looking like, in 3 years. There are guys here now who can absolutely be part of that. And the way they played helps that. But you've got to build that culture. Look, if you look at Oklahoma City, and Mark Daigneault has taught the same thing through, like, it's been the same principles up and down that organization the whole way. Now, eventually they got more talent than anybody in the league, probably, or at least close to it. But the culture was built ground up, and you can see it when those guys, the way they, not only the way they play, but the post game, the interviews, the professionalism, but they're having fun with it. Like, they built what they wanted to build, and it just takes time.
Scotty brought up George Karl, and it just got me thinking, and I'm a big fan of Mike Malone. You know, speaking of a guy that knows when to spout off or fire at a teammate or two, who is considered the best coach in the NBA right now, or the top couple best coaches in the NBA?
Eric Spoelstra. I mean, I know Miami's struggling mightily right now, but like everybody would take him in a heartbeat. He is still considered the guy who is the heir to the, Pat Riley's role. It might ultimately, this might be, sort of what they did with Brad Stevens in Boston, right? Like it might ultimately be Eric Spoelstra slides into the president's role, guy in charge of player operations, and they bring in a new coach. But right now, everybody would take him as a coach, number one. And then you get into that second tier, and it's, there'd be a whole bunch. There's a whole bunch of people like, but it's easy to name the guys who are winning. I think there is a lot of respect for Mike Malone. There's a lot of respect for Dagnall. There's quickly become a lot of respect for the Celtics coach, whose name suddenly is Mazzulla.
Yeah.
Although that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out if they struggle a little bit shooting threes in the postseason. Like he wants to shoot so many threes, and we'll see how that plays out over time. But I'm probably forgetting a couple names off the top of my head. But
what are you thinking of JJ Redick right now?
I like what he's done the first year. I think that they play better defense. He's got them pretty well organized. It's interesting. He really wants to play this switching defensive style. And they look, these last two games the Lakers lost to teams that you'd think they'd beat, with Orlando, now that they're healthy, Orlando and Chicago, and they had LeBron back for both. Both of those teams said, "You're going to switch everything? Okay, let's go." First off, they ran them down because it's an older team, and they just ran past them. But both of those teams said, "You want to run? You want to switch everything? Okay, we're going to target guys. You make it easy for us to target guys with this switching." So it's going to be interesting to see how he adapts as the personnel adapts. But overall, I think he's done a good job the first year, and the players like him. They're relating to him. So far, so good.
Oklahoma City, the first team to 60 wins. Shea gets 32 the other night. Give me your thoughts on, is this team a real, true title contender this season?
So I was just telling somebody else this, a couple people this the other day. I think they're going to win it all this year. I genuinely. Oh. This is after seeing them in person this week, beat the Clippers without Jalen Williams, the good Jalen Williams, the wing, the good, the future, the All NBA guy, and Chet Holmgren. They are deep. They are able to. They defend. They play versatile styles. They can beat you a number of different ways. I just like the way they're constructed, and I think they're serious right now and playing really great basketball at a time when I'm like, I don't know. Is Boston? They haven't even seen them completely healthy, and they're good, but they're right there. And Cleveland's dropped 4 in a row, and it's like I look at Oklahoma City, and I just think that's the team that's most put together this season.
Well, I'm a little bit worried about Damian Lillard, Kurt, and I saw the reports earlier this morning, and I had it on the docket to talk to Scotty about. We haven't got into detail on it, but anytime you hear blood clot anything, it's a major concern. They found a blood clot in his calf. It looks like they're going to keep him off the court for a certain period of time. They got 11 games left. He's saying he should be back on the court, but give people some thoughts that really care about Damian Lillard around here as a Weber State alum.
Yeah, I'm worried. We'll see what happens with that, just because deep vein thrombosis in the leg area is more serious than like Wembanyama's out with the same thing in the shoulder, but that's usually considered an overuse kind of one-time thing. They're saying that's the case with this, and it's been treated quickly, and he could return, this season or during the playoffs. But it just tends to be more serious when it's in the legs, and at his age, it's just concerning. It's concerning. I want him to take care of himself first. Like, he's got a family. He's got things that are a lot more important than chasing another ring with the Milwaukee Bucks, as much as he wants that. And we'll see. We'll see. I hope those reports are true. Don't you? Ultimately, just I hope those reports are true. So not only does he eventually get back on the court, but he gets back to living a normal life and not having this hang over him for the rest of his life.
Rutgers not in the NCAA tournament,
No.
Certainly not in the Sweet 16. Cooper Flagg and Duke certainly continue to make their run. Is there any other players? I bring this up because I remember Kevin O'Connor, the old-time general manager for the Utah Jazz, when they drafted Gordon Hayward, mentioned that Butler's run with Gordon Hayward really cemented their belief in Gordon Hayward as a player, and one of the reasons why they took him. Is there other players outside of Cooper Flagg who I think could lose tomorrow and still be the number one overall pick? Is there any other players to keep an eye on in terms of their performance in the tournament that could elevate them up in the draft?
Yeah, by the way, I'm with you on Flagg, who I had a scout tell me he could blow up his knee and he'd be the number one pick in this draft. It's not terribly close. I think Queen has helped his cause from Maryland, and not just with that shot. He has been he's shown off the best of his game. He's with that passing, with that shooting, with that offensive skill set that's a little Alperen Sengun-like a little on offense. He can do a lot of things well, and he doesn't look horribly athletic, but he's able to kind of pull it off at a high level. He's not a great defender, but I think he's helped his cause. VJ Edgecombe is going to probably go fourth. He is a pretty solid number 4. Whatever the order ends up being, it seems to be a couple people, wherever you have him versus Harper versus Bailey, those three behind Flagg seem pretty locked in. And then at 5, it seems to start to branch out depending on the team and their needs and what they see, frankly, in some of these players. But I think Queen helped his cause. I'm trying to think of an Edgecombe has looked, even though Baylor hasn't, and he in particular didn't necessarily look great. He showed enough.
You think BYU's Yegor Damon is near the end, considered a low lottery pick?
I think he's helped his cause too, right? Performing on this stage and taking BYU into the Sweet 16. I think so. I haven't gone that deep in the draft, but I think that's where there's a lot of variation from, like I said, almost 5, almost through 20. It's kind of a who do you like thing. It's not as cleanly tiered as it is some years. And so I absolutely think there's teams that would take him somewhere in the 10 to 15 range if he's available and they get them. It's going to depend a little on the lottery and kind of who's available at that point and where things land. But I absolutely think he could go that high. And I think, I don't want to overstate how much teams trust, the scouting combine interviews and how those guys do in individual workouts will matter as much or frankly probably more than how they do in the tournament. But it absolutely does help that, hey, these are big moments and big pressure moments and he's stepping up. It's a good sign.
Kurt, it used to be crazy to see a guy leave the NBA to take a head coaching job at the NCAA ranks, but we've got a couple of them here, top-end assistants, and Kevin Young and now Alex Jensen taking the job at the University of Utah. Are you seeing more of this, where these high-level NBA assistants are taking NCAA jobs, or is this just rare for the state of Utah?
No, it's actually been a topic. And Mike Bibby just took Sacramento State. There's been some NBA level, although he didn't really have a good job right now. There's more NBA people moving to college right now. Part of that, I think, is the college players in an NIL world, once you're, especially in the larger schools, it is a little more professional. And so there is some of that. But I think that there's a lot of guys looking at the situation right now, looking at the money that's now available to good college coaches and saying, even if I'm not, I don't want to be an NBA head coach that much. And maybe the lifestyle of a college head coach is a little better. It's certainly less travel. It's more practice. It's, there's more time with your family than NBA coaches get. And I think I think you see it in the NFL a little bit. There's guys who are just willing to jump back and, man, that's the lifestyle I want. And I think you're going to see more of that in the NBA. There's certainly been a chunk of it. It's been a talking point around the league of, the last 6 months or so.
Well, and we've also seen, obviously Adrian Wojnarowski makes the jump and he becomes the GM for St. Bonaventure. Yeah. But now we got Wes Wilcox, who was the assistant GM for the Sacramento Kings. He's now at the University of Utah, heading up their GM position as well. So are you seeing a little bit of movement from a front office standpoint too?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that almost makes more sense. Like basketball is basketball, and the X's and O's are the X's and O's. But handling a NIL world is truly a GM role, and you do really need somebody who gets it in that job. No matter how big or little the money is, I don't think Woj is handing out massive amounts of money at St. Bonaventure, but even so, like that kind of recruiting, and that kind of situation, I think you're going to see a lot of guys, because it suddenly becomes a lot more similar, right? The GM role is much more similar to an NBA front office role. And again, if you've got ties to an area and you want to be back home or in a specific spot, it makes a lot of sense.
Kurt Helin, NBC Sports, ProBasketballTalk.com. Kurt, always a pleasure. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Hey, take care, guys. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Man.
There you go. Kurt Helin right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. There's a lot of, if Yegor Damon feels like he can go 10 to 15, he's got to go. And I think he's probably anticipating going.
What would the odds be that he'd fall down?
I can't imagine they're very, very strong. Like, I think he will be a low level, like 9 to 14 range pick in the draft.
These two NCAA tournament games are the first two times where I thought maybe he is ready. Now, there's a lot of guys that get drafted that aren't ready. Cody Williams.
Not ready.
Not ready. Taylor Hendricks was not ready. Now, he's in his second year and injured, and the first year was rough at times, but some upside, but rough at times. So we know that Yegor is going to be a serious project. But these last couple of games in the tournament, I've seen his assist vision. I've seen, like, big boy shots.
Oh, yeah.
Step back, big boy shots where it's like in your face. And I've seen him get aggressive with bigs across from him or defenders across from him that are trying to get aggressive and trying to intimidate his youth. And he doesn't, as a young kid, he doesn't get intimidated. In fact, he fires back on you. So those are the little things in high-level competition that I'm seeing from Yegor. He needs to have another good one.
Yeah.
I think every time he shows guts against big competition, I think it's another big check mark for a potential lottery pick. But I think he's right on that borderline, which says to me, you go.
Yeah, especially considering the crazy amount of talent that's going to be in next year's draft.
Yep.
All right, Hans and Scotty, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
The wheel is loaded, and it's time to talk some sports. This is Sports Roulette with Hans and Scotty on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Hans Olsen, Scott Gerard, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It is time for another edition of Sports Roulette. We take some of the big storylines, put it on a roulette wheel, we spin it. Wherever that little ball lands is what we end up talking about. So with that, let's get to it. Lloyd, fire it up.
What the Nell?
Okay, so I'm sure you've seen this going around.
Yes, old man Nell.
Trevin Nell is the oldest player in NCAA basketball. How old is he?
How old is he?
Well, how long has Luka Doncic been in the NBA?
What, 7 years now?
This is his 7th season. Trevin Nell is 5 months older than Luka Doncic. Think about this. 7 years in the NBA for Luka Doncic. Trevin Nell is 5 months older than him. So how did this happen? Well, you had a couple of years for a mission.
Yep.
You had a year for a medical redshirt. You had 1 other year of eligibility in there, and you kick that ball on down the line, and you're 26 years old, and you're playing in an NCAA tournament.
Still working on COVID year.
Yep, working on COVID, and now you're 26 years old, and you're in your final year of eligibility, and you're older than a guy that's got 7 years of NBA experience under his belt. It really is hard to believe how veteran Trevin Knell is, and also how important his performance has been to this BYU basketball team.
Yeah.
He's knocking down critical threes.
I mean, we're talking about Yegor. We're talking about Richie Saunders, Foose,
Keita. Yeah.
We don't bring up Trevin Knell a lot, but we should.
We should because he's the consistent hit. He's the cooler. You know, if Alabama's going on a crazy run and BYU's got 3 or 4 misses, Knell's the one I want to rotate just outside the elbow and let him knock it down, just outside the break. Let him knock it down and let him catch that momentum again. Because he can hit. Well, it just seems like his favorite area is just above the break.
Yep.
And he's so consistent with it. But you're right, we don't talk enough about him. And it's not like he's the team superstar. He's just the consistent old man that's been running in this league for a bit.
Well, and I think that's what's been really good about BYU is their ability this year to rely on so many different people. It's not the Jimmer show like what we saw back the last time they were in the Sweet 16. You've got guys that contribute from 1 to 7, 1 to 8, 1 to 9. And Kevin Young, usually as the season goes on, you tighten up your rotation. It seems like he's expanded his rotation as the season's gone on. And anybody can go off on any given night, which makes them extremely dangerous.
Played his first game well before COVID ever hit in this country.
What was it? I think it was November 5th. I saw it like 2018 or 2019.
2019.
19.
Yeah.
Jeez.
He's been doing it for a long time, longer than anybody else in the tournament.
That's crazy. All right. Spit it, Lloyd.
Strong ratings for the NCAA.
Which is interesting, too, because we haven't seen a lot of crazy nail-biter games. I mean, that Maryland-Colorado State game was great, but for the most part, there hasn't been a ton of really great drama.
No.
But the NCAA men's basketball tournament is averaging 9.4 million viewers, marking the best figure through the second round since 1993. It's a plus 3% increase from last year. Sunday alone was a 2.1 million viewers, led by Duke, Baylor, Kentucky, Illinois, Florida, UConn, which, again, I hate saying this, but you look at all those programs, they're all, essentially blue bloods. Duke, Baylor, Kentucky, Illinois, Florida, UConn, those are all teams that have had strong success in the NCAA tournament in one way, shape, or form. They're all recognizable, so this is the year where we don't have any of those Cinderellas. They're all traditional blue blood programs in the Sweet 16, and you're seeing it from the ratings. So, we all claim we like Cinderella. Maybe we don't. Maybe deep down we do want to just see the blue bloods, because right now the ratings are the best that we've seen in nearly 30 years. And it's being led by a bunch of traditional programs running chalk through the NCAA tournament.
First of all, is that 9 million? Is that
9.4 million viewers in average for each game.
For each game?
Yeah.
So
on average, each game is averaging 9.4 million viewers.
That's an insane number.
Yeah. That's why live sports, man, that's why people are still flocking there in terms of advertising dollars.
Didn't the BYU Colorado Bowl game get like 8 million and set
all kinds of records, yeah.
Crazy records?
Yeah.
So these tournament games are blowing the viewership out of the water. Great.
And this is including
That's amazing.
CBS, TBS, TNT, True TV, the streaming numbers, all of that stuff involved.
Well, that is an incredible amount of eyeballs, and it's worth the investment. And you correct me if I'm wrong. You've been doing this NCAA tournament thing a lot longer than I have. You've watched it and covered it, and you know it better than me. But people make a lot of the Cinderellas. But didn't the Cinderellas usually drop in the Sweet 16 anyways? Isn't it usually blue bloods that advance to
usually,
the Elite Eight?
You might have that one team that makes it, like the Florida Atlantic, that makes that run, or there could be a team that does a run into the Elite Eight. But to have no Cinderellas at all in the Sweet 16,
that's rare.
That's rare. That's the first time, I want to say, in 7 or 8 years that you do not have a G5 school or a G4 school in the Sweet 16. So usually somebody makes it in there. Right now, your Cinderella is Arkansas as a 10 seed, who has the largest NIL payroll of anybody left in the tournament. So it's hard to call them a Cinderella when the only thing that makes them a Cinderella is that they just underachieved in the regular season.
Right now, wouldn't BYU be the biggest kind of underdog, or not underdog because they were 6th seed coming out of a big, but aren't they looked at as the team that would be like the biggest surprise to advance?
Yeah. Yep, 100%. And they were playing the best basketball of anybody in the country going into the tournament.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right. All right, let's go one more, Lloyd. Spin it.
Now that's an investment.
I bring these a lot of times, whether it's whole world news or good, bad, ugly, whatever, I bring in stories that I think will amuse you or interest you.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I bring in stories that I know will annoy you.
Yeah.
And this is one of them.
Sending me off like that, huh?
1985, Michael Jordan's initial jersey that he wore in his first ever uniform. First ever uniform in his first ever game in the NBA. Chicago Bulls uniform. It sold in 1985 for $800. It sold at auction yesterday for $4.21 million. Oh my
gosh.
You imagine spending $4.2. Now, that's a jersey that's got a little cachet to it. The first jersey Michael Jordan ever wore in the NBA. That's pretty cool. But still, to drop $4.2 million on that bad boy when it was purchased in 1985, so 40 years ago, for $800.
The only way that's going to bug me is if that same guy that bought that jersey ends up firing 10 employees to save himself $20,000 on the year.
I could see that.
Not that we saw that in this state ever.
No.
For coins.
All coins are the same. Hans and Scotty.
Hey, by the way, that is actually a really cool piece of memorabilia.
Oh, yeah.
I was kind of going through things. Somebody posted something about Michael Jordan, LeBron James, blah, blah, blah. And I came to the conclusion, this is my personal opinion, of all the GOATs, I think Michael Jordan's the GOAT of all GOATs. And I don't know why that's so personal to me. But, I've seen the videos of him get in the face of any tough guy in the NBA, never backed down, never showed fear, never lost in a finals series. The guy was all nails all the time, feisty as hell. And I'd say when we're talking about GOATs, Mike Tyson for me in boxing, or Tiger Woods in golf, or Tom Brady in football, or John Jones in UFC, or you go down the list, Michael Jordan, to me, is the GOAT of all GOATs in his given sport.
Yep. I 1,000% agree with you.
Why is that? The hell is that? We're not even, basketball's not our background.
Nope.
Football's our background.
But you got to recognize greatness at that level. And there was nobody greater. Nobody greater that could single-handedly take over a game the way he took it over.
And nobody that gave you this feeling of deep emotion.
Yes.
Michael draws emotion. And I don't know if it's because he looks like Denzel Washington, and it's like he's got that look, like that dreadful, fearful, nasty, intimidating look when he wants to get angry. And I don't know if it's because it was at the peak of our childhood, Scotty.
There's some of that.
He's cranking out his best basketball when we were the most impressionable.
Yep, that's true.
And we're buying his shoes, or at least, little Idaho boys, we'd see people buy his shoes, and we'd want those shoes and never be able to get them. I'm sure a lot of that plays into it, but he moves me more emotionally than anybody else in their given sport.
Yeah. We'll wrap this up. Hans and Scotty coming up next, or JJ and Alex coming up next. We'll get you ready for their show straight ahead. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
You're locked on to Hans Olsen and Scotty Chin. That's right. Yeah! On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
All right, wrapping up another edition of the show. Hans and Scotty, fun one today. Back at it tomorrow, Hans, and it's a big one as 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, BYU and Alabama.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the Major League Baseball opening day.
Oh, that is that, too.
It is that, too.
Yeah.
How are my Dodgers going to be this year, Scotty?
You know what? If they'd only decide to spend a few dollars on free agents, they might be better. But as long as they're tight like they are, I don't give them much of a chance.
Are they going to be Mookie-less?
Yeah, they're going to be. Right now, they're Mookie-less. He's down 25 pounds, and they can't figure out what the sickness is. So I'm a little bit worried about whatever position Mookie plays. Outfield? I think he's right.
Maybe he accidentally ingested some non-edible undies.
Yeah, I think that certainly could have happened. Maybe not one, not two, five.
Five, Mookie?
Come on, Mookie. Slow it down there a little bit, big fella. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Coming up next, JJ and Alex.